Hello everyone, it's Path. Today we are going to quickly take a look at something that to me it is really obvious and something that I hope you are not missing out. That is about Destined Rivals. Of course, there are many people already talk about this, and most people have covered this and talk about how the price are going very high. And we all know that this is one of the most expensive or one of the booster box that's climbed the fastest from release. At the moment is already $315 last sold. I'm going to show you some recently sold data very quickly, but I think what is also important is how does it compare to, you know, what a few of the really popular boxes or very pricey boxes in the past, and how do they compare to them during their release. I think that is something that will be interesting to look at, so stay with me and we'll take a look at them together. So without further ado, on TCG Player, they are already selling at 310, 320, even 315, some of the more recent sales. So on average, it's about $315 market price is what it's showing. And this, it's really quite crazy because this set is only out for about 2 months, slightly more than 2 months. So if you look at the whole 3 months data, the release is on 28th May, so you can see a dip, a small little dip, a month even after release, and then it just shot back up after most of the people run out of their stocks. And so those people who actually hold their stocks, I would imagine that they are slowly raising the price because they're really not in any urgency to sell them, because they know that there are no stock coming in a short term. In fact, we have actually expected to get some restocked. At least in Singapore, we don't really see that at the moment. I've heard in US, you know, distributors were actually stocking up their sellers, their LGSs at a very high price, almost close to a market price, 200 something USD. But in Singapore, we don't even hear it at all. At least from the regular shop that I went to, I didn't hear anything about restock at all, even at a very high price. So I think that's the reason why the price is not falling at all. At the moment, it's just climbing up and up. Of course, you can see the volume is actually reducing, and this is quite normal because as the price climbs up, I mean, less people are willing to fork out this money to pay them, except, you know, the people who probably are running revenge ship, or they really believe in this data, they want to hold it in the long term, they believe it will do better, very much better in the long term, then maybe they will keep them. Otherwise, you know, it's quite normal that when the price goes up, volume will go down, sold volume. So that is on TCG Player. What about on eBay? Similar things that you have seen. These are the sold items. So the more recent one, just today, is $320. This is in US, Australian. This is for 400 Australian dollars, which will be, if we translate, that will be close to 300 USD per box. So this is from Australia, and then this is in US, very expensive, 340 almost, 325 from the US. Australian, very expensive, 500 Australian dollar, US 324, so on and so forth. So I think you get the idea. This is also very expensive. This is almost 400 USD. Anyway, let's go back to what we wanted to compare today. So we all get that it is very expensive, and we have, at least in the Scarlet and Violet era, we have not seen this before. Destined Rival is one that even probably going to go higher than Paldea Evolve very soon. Paldea Evolve at the moment is still the highest at about $350, I believe, maybe slightly less. But this is actually getting very close. This is only 10% lower than Paldea Evolve. So if we don't see any restock soon, I'm not surprised at all when, you know, this price may get very close to Paldea Evolve and ended up being the most expensive set in Scarlet and Violet era, even though it is the most recent set. This is SV10. In fact, it's the last main set of the era. What I would like us to take a look now is actually Evolving Skies, because we all know that Evolving Skies was the best performing set in the Sword and Shield era, and I think there's no argument that, you know, Destined Rival is going to become the best performing set in Scarlet and Violet. But are they going to perform similarly? I have no idea, but I think this is probably the closest thing we can look at. Maybe not to the same scale, but at least will give us some idea. So this set was actually released on the 27th of August 2021, almost 4 years ago. Okay, to say that this is not even 4 years old and is selling for $2,000 is quite crazy. But yeah, so it was almost 4 years ago when it was released, and at the release they are actually going quite expensive, you know, compared to the other boxes in that time period. So they're actually pre-selling, and at release they were at above MSRP of almost 160, 170, and then there was a pretty sizable reprint and it dropped back down to 105, 106. That was the lowest probably for a few days. After that it just kept climbing. By the 1 year mark, let's take a look. This is about 27 here, 150 back to about MSRP, and then the next year it's already $400, right? And as you know, usually in about 2.5 years from release, that is where most people will assume that, you know, they will stop printing about on the set. So you can see that at about 2.5 years mark is usually when we have a big leg up, and from about $400 it shot up to about close to $700 within a very short period of time, about 2 to 3 months time, and then it stayed there for a while, about $700, and then shot back up again. This is just end of last year, so October last year, less than a year ago, it was still $700, and then it was $1,003, and so on and so forth. The rest are something that you are familiar with. Now it's already a $2,000 box. But what we are looking at right now, I think is interesting, because if we just look at, you know, in the 2 months after release of this set, Evolving Sky, you can see that the price actually did stay quite high until there was a reprint in the third and fourth month onwards. There was a reprint. So I believe Destined Rival is probably going to follow something similar. I mean, as soon as we have a huge reprint, I hope it's coming soon, very, very soon. And I hope we get a really, really big reprint. I mean, the recent one in the US, I think it's just a restock, because if it is a sizable reprint, it should reach Singapore as well, or, you know, the size will be a little bit more rather than just a few cases here and there. I hope they are really printing this significantly in a very big volume, and I hope they are giving to the distributor at a pretty good price. I hope it reaches Singapore. Sure, I have no idea whether we are gonna get it or not, because if they don't, unfortunately the following thing is gonna happen like what Evolving Skies experience, because right after that reprint where it drops it back down to a very low price, and just kept going up and up and up and up and up. It didn't look back at all, just like any other booster box in any era, especially if it is, everybody knows it's the best performing set. There's no reason why it will stay the same, go sideways, or, you know, go backwards in terms of the price. So this is something that we should look out for. I mean, if you have not gotten into Destined Rival, I hope you have the chance to buy into them if you're looking to invest. I mean, if you're not, then yeah, you can give it a miss, not a problem. But if you're really looking to invest, I think this is definitely the best performing set, is quite obviously so for the era. And looking back at my own purchase, I only got one case from my supplier, and at a pretty good price. I think I paid about $140 something per box, and I ended up selling two. As you know, I showed it in my other video for a pretty high price at $270, but comparing to the price today, actually it's not that high, right? Maybe I should have just kept them sealed and, you know, don't sell them at all. But at that point of time, in my mind, I was thinking, surely this set we are gonna get reprints in, maybe not immediately, or maybe not restocked. In fact, I was actually hoping to get a restock pretty soon by now, but unfortunately it didn't happen in Singapore. But in my mind, I was thinking, surely there's going to be a reprint maybe the next 3-4 months, and then I will have another opportunity to buy them, hopefully at a lower price. But I honestly did not expect it to just kept going up and up and up, higher and higher. I think it probably beat most of our expectation. Anybody told you that they expected it to be $300 by now, I think most of them will be lying. I mean, some of them of course are more bullish than others, but I think if you just ask, out of 10 person, 8 of them probably will say that it's going to be lower than during the pre-sale, which is what normally happens. Yeah, but I'm quite happy that after I sold off 2 of the boxes, I managed to bring my average cost down to $85, which is really crazy. And in fact, if you are looking at today's price, which is about $320, this is almost 3x of what I paid for the 4 boxes. So honestly, if for some reason Pokemon Company International decide not to reprint the set at all, which I don't think will happen, but if it really went on like this and I couldn't catch any more restock at all and no more reprints and the price just kept going up and up and up, I am actually okay with just sticking with 4 boxes, even though honestly wish to have more. But obviously at this point of time, this bull market is really difficult to find boxes at a good price. So am I okay with missing out? Yes. And actually, at least I didn't miss out totally. I got 4 boxes at a really good average cost at the moment. So I'm happy with that. That's what I wanted to share today. I think this is something that we should really think about, because Destined Rival is really very obvious in terms of being the best performer of the era. So if you are looking to invest, I think this is a set to go with. So I hope you manage to get this in a good price, and see you in the next one.